So welcome everyone to TiE Singapore. We're excited to share with you the stories of the different founders that we have worked with and engaged with over the years. A very special such founder is Peiru. She's the CEO of KeyReply. And why this is also incredibly special is because we're putting the spotlight on female founders this month, given it's International Women's Day. And female or not, Peiru represents the best of the founder community in our midst. Peiru, we'd love to hear a little bit from you about you, straight from the horse's mouth, if you will.
Sure. Thank you, Maya, for the very nice introduction. So, hi, everyone. My name is Peiru, and I'm the CEO of KeyReply. So, it's an interesting journey. I've been in entrepreneurship for the past 12 years, right? And prior to that, I was trained as an engineer as well. And I think it's a very exciting journey. Always, I always tell people, right? If you are at the point in your life where you're not sure what to do, just go work in a startup, just go start something. It's not that it's a means to the end, but because I think it gives so much, flavor to you discovering who you really are. Right. And I think that, the startup journey is never smooth. It's always filled with ups and downs. And I think that's super, super rewarding and enjoy. And I was about to say enjoyable, but I was actually going to correct myself to say that, I think it's the whole journey that makes a difference, not the individual paths, right? So I think that kind of ups and downs really brought me to, I think, what I really, really enjoy at the end of the day, which is in technology, right? So my dad, worked in technology for more than 30, 40 years. And, since the coding with punch cards time, yeah. And my sister is in EdTech as well. So I think that really kind of fostered just go do it kind of mindset, right? So that was kind of how my family go, right? We didn't care, are you female or male? We just cared that if that's what you do, can you do it and be really good at it, right? So that's, I think, how we were being brought up. And I think that brought me to, what KeyReply does, which is really to be at the forefront of patient engagement for hospitals and healthcare systems, right? Because we really, really want to be the bridge to help people be the first touch point, right? When they want to be in touch with their healthcare provider. And I'm super excited about the work that we do. And I really, really hope that, our work can touch millions across the world.
So it's interesting to know that your pathway into health tech came via tech rather than health in some ways, right? It's always interesting to see these verticals where you either come in on one side or the other. So good to know you're in a long history of engineering brains and talent in some ways.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. I think you're very observant. Health is not something that you can go into just because you want to. I think as much as you choose it, sometimes it has to choose you as well, right? So I think, it's also a kind of convergence of opportunities and options that we encountered as we went along too. So.
Yeah, it is. You're very right. I think it's interesting. You're at the tectonic shift of what feels like this bridge and this merger of health and technology coming together. And maybe that you can put a little bit of spotlight as we go through the conversation today on what the future of this space looks like. But let's maybe start very much with your inner circle, with KeyReply. You guys are working with public and private healthcare providers. Tell us a little bit about what the engagements look like. What's the goals on these engagements as you build out?
Yeah, I think that's a very key differentiator, right? When we talk about healthcare, it sounds very homogeneous, but it's really the last thing, that everyone has a different kind of perspective on that. I would think that for public healthcare organizations, a lot is on sustainability, right? A lot of it is about looking into the future where there will be, the aging population, or there will be inadequate staffing in the future. I think these are very, very fundamental problems that if we don't solve today, it'll be way too late, right, in 10, 20 years time. And even in a country like Singapore, where we are very prepared, this is already something that's keeping people, healthcare leaders up at night, right? And even for the countries around the region and beyond, right, this is not, they also experience the same thing, but at a different scale, right? And probably different proportions. I would say that not many countries are in a very nice spot where, they will have, they don't have the kind of inverted pyramid kind of problem to deal with. I would think that most countries would have that issues, and infrastructure wise, by the healthcare systems, all the primary and acute care settings, are they set up to work together so that we can treat people in all different kind of settings instead of all by default just go to one place to get things sorted out. I mean, this is definitely, I think, not just a one-day thing. The technology infrastructure, I think the physical infrastructure, the mindset, the shifts, the education that needs to happen today, right, must all happen. And I think that's a lot for the public healthcare, sector to deal with and to plan for as well. Right. And when we talk about the private healthcare sector, I think, every country has a very different dynamic in terms of how public and public and private works together. And I think, to some countries, private works very well to support what public healthcare institutions can't do. Or maybe, when we talk about, I think in the future, like more active stance towards preventive care versus what we do when things happen to us, then we go to a doctor, right? Don't talk to the doctor unless something is wrong with you. I think this kind of mindset needs to shift, and I think both public and private healthcare settings need to work together to change that. Of course, I think private settings have been very I think their business models have been kind of shaken up, with COVID, right? With traditional sources of patients kind of not being able to travel or visit. I think a lot of them have been forced to change in terms of how they engage patients as well. It's not that, you just sit there and patients will just come from different parts of the world. I think now they realize the importance of really engaging your existing patients. How do you move them, hold their hands through the different, times of their lives or phases of their lives, right? How do you be a lot more relevant, and longitudinal care, right? How you provide that as compared to like just being very episodic or whenever you need me, I'm there. But I think they all know that they need to do more, and they really need to be top of mind and be at the fingertips of the patients. I think this is a very fundamental change that we're going to see going forward.
And I think it's been interesting if you start to think about, we talk a lot about hybrid working in the corporate world, but you're almost sort of seeing this future of medicine where there's a hybrid care engagement, right? Where you have some in-person, some telehealth, some sort of what bandwidth can I take off with communication through platforms like KeyReply. It's been fascinating to see what hybrid healthcare starts to look like in terms of patient engagement.
Interesting. When you talk about hybrid, right, I would introduce two different types of approach to how we define hybrid. One is the obvious one, which is, are you in person or are you remote? Obviously, some conditions are way more suitable to be handled remotely as compared to in person. And of course, don't mention all these virtual signs monitoring programs that are super, super helpful, right? I think that's one. Another one that I think would be what I call hybrid. I would say that it's a hybrid of skill sets, right? So do you always need an MD, right, to talk to you all the time? Maybe sometimes what you need is a trained nurse, or sometimes you need is a trained caregiver, and of different levels of availability and costs, right? So that people across the society would have access to care. I won't go so far to say that it's equal opportunity or equal access to care. I think that's a really important vision to move towards. But practically speaking, I think it'll be a whole spectrum of skill sets that ideally technology can train at different levels will be able to administer a certain basic level of care. there's something more that I think that we could possibly look forward to in a future that's not too distant away. Right? Many people are talking about, remote care, or even thinking about what AR, VR, or the metaverse could bring, to what the care experience looks like, right? So I think that's where, we can also look forward to, having more intelligent virtual assistants who are, immersive as well. Right now, you see a lot of text-based ones that you can chat with, but maybe in the future, with the prevalence of AR or virtual reality kind of experiences, perhaps you are not just waiting, right, for like a video call to happen like that. You could also possibly have a virtual hospital that you can interact with the virtual nurses, the virtual caregivers, and all those, and imagine them almost looking like you and I, and having the brains and operating 24/7 of how it would look like in a hospital today, right? So these are some of the kind of technologies that we are also working on to bring towards uplifting and elevating the whole patient experience in the future. Like, not everyone can read or type or has accessibility to kind of type or listen, right? That's why we think that going forward, increasing all these options for accessibility, right, to people who might not be able to hear or read or type and all those. I think these are, not just going to increase accessibility. These will also make it more fun and engaging, and hopefully to increase patients' compliance to instructions too.
I love it. Virtual hospital in the cloud entirely.
Yeah.
And patient experience. Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
I'm not going to drop Web3. I think it freaks people out sometimes. In healthcare, they're like, goodness, we can't even deal with Web2. Let's not talk about Web3. But I think it doesn't take away from the possibility of having a very immersive kind of metaverse-ish type of experience.
And I love that. I think the mix of skills and the hybrid nature of skills and who is sort of attending to that engagement is also very interesting. So is it fair to say, Peiru, that there's interesting shift in also jobs in the healthcare industry or skill sets that we have to train people for? In some ways, do tech-enabled or tech-savvy nurses and doctors have a leg up in the future? I know it's a bit controversial, but I have to ask it.
Yeah, I think, we are starting to see doctors who are very tech savvy and very interested in that. And I think that there will always be a space for doctors of all kinds of preferences. You will always need doctors who are very, very good with, their bedside manners and dealing with patients. You need doctors who are very, very good with their hands and what they can do, right? There will always, and I think where we deal more with are doctors who are more interested in technology, who are a very, very interesting breed. So we have seen so much more interest in them actually getting to learn the tech. They actually want to be more hands-on, right? If you asked me a few years ago, we dealt with doctors who are like, oh, I don't want to touch it. I just tell you what I need. You just do it for me. If it works, I'm not going to ask too many questions, right? As long as it does what it's supposed to do. And now, like fast forward a few years later, we are seeing doctors who are like, show me. I want to do it. I want to see, right? I want to be in control. I want to be able to change things as I need them to be. I don't want to be reliant on you, right? Because I think that they start to see that the moment they get hold of these, what they are thinking of is skill, right? They really, really see that, if they can propagate their knowledge, like what kind of impact they will have on the community, not just within the local community. They're also thinking, right? We are talking to doctors now who are thinking a lot further. They're thinking, okay, if I'm a specialist doctor, can I make my knowledge available so that doctors in the community, not just in Singapore, but in other countries, they can also get access and they can provide care. Family care physicians can also provide specialist care, right? Maybe not to the same level, but at least, a good level. And I think this is very exciting. And I think this is, we do see doctors leading the charge towards this. And I think it's very exciting. Yeah.
That's incredible. You've uncovered 3 major trends already. You've talked about longitudinal care. You've talked about how do you define hybrid in the health world. and potentially doctors getting to scale impact and legacy in ways that only technology could provide in some ways. As we think more holistically about what's going to happen to health and medicine, which sounds really exciting from everything we're seeing, but what else? Is there any other big trends that you're sort of looking forward to and think that, has the world sort of waiting to embrace?
Well, I guess I think health is a very, how do I say that? A lot of people call it a very mammoth industry or sector that doesn't always move very fast, right? It's not the most well-known for moving fast, right? I think understandably because the stakes are high, right? And, for everything that we want to do, one step we want to take forward, we get more than 10 questions on security, privacy, what are you going to do with all these data and all those things, right? And these are very relevant questions, but I think these are very, very it's challenging, right? You want to move fast and yet you can't, right? So I think healthcare is at the point where the technology development is way, way ahead of adoption, right? And for sometimes the right reasons, sometimes people don't understand and they want to err on the side of being sure, right? So I think I would see this kind of I won't call it a struggle. I'll call it maybe a dance, right? I think this will continue to happen, and you can start to see the move towards cloud. You can see that there are some healthcare leaders who are pushing the boundaries, and I think these are very sometimes geographical. Right? We can see that there are certain geographical areas where it's top down. They have the kind of direction that, hey, let's go for it. And we can see that then these countries, they push maybe an open model, right? And these countries are really charging ahead with this a lot more than the rest who are trying to still be, very conservative, right? Like the European countries versus some maybe in the Middle East, Taiwan, or maybe some of the Baltic countries. They are really moving very, very fast. And I think this is very fundamental, right? I think that's something that everyone would have to continue to kind of work towards. I think, also no question about it. Many people are talking about being very patient-centric. But when we say being patient-centric, I mean, what do we really mean? Right? I think in more developed countries and the less ones, I think, giving access is still very, very important, right? Even in, I think, a country like Singapore, giving access is still very, very important with and can comply with, right? I think giving access is still super important, giving people education, right? So that they do what they need to do, right? Rather than when it's too late. I think this is a very, very challenging thing to do, but still very, very important. But I think, many people are starting to want to be, taking more ownership of their health. And how do they actually do that? Do they actually have access to their health records? Do they have access to, like measuring devices and all these things that can help them move forward? So I think we're seeing a lot more, it used to be maybe like a normal curve, normal distribution, right? But now I think we're seeing it really, really come up at both ends. People are starting to be more aware for those who are super, super ahead of things, and people who are were had less accessible to less access, right, to healthcare. They're also seeing a big shift in the infrastructure to let them do that. So I think access is still huge, education is still huge. I think ownership of their health is going to be huge as well.
All amazing and really interesting food for thought, right? The tension between speed and the tension between care for data, ownership, all of that. So what does it feel like? You're sitting at the heart of what feels like two fairly different industries coming together, right? Health's regulated space, technology generally doesn't like regulation. Any tensions there, and sort of how do you see this play out?
Yeah, I think we will always need champions who will kind of be very willing to put their necks forward, right, to push things forward. And we also need the realists, right, and the people who are conservative to hold people back in case we get too excited about things, right? At the end of the day, I think it's about constantly redefining the edges, right? The frameworks, and how we can let things move forward, yet know what other kind of uh, risks that we want to take. So like, for example, when KeyReply first started in the public healthcare sector, we are the first application to be on the cloud, right? We were the first to deal with quite a fair bit of sensitive or important information that's not set up in the typical way, right? So obviously people were nervous, right, about it, but yet people wanted to try. And I think I'm quite proud of the healthcare leaders who were willing to give it a shot, right? Because you always need the first one to go forward. Of course, it's painful to be the first one. Do I always want to be the first one? Not always, but I think it's worth it. The fight is absolutely worth it. But I think going forward, it's more important for us to always know, right, where do we want to choose to fight. We can't win on all fronts. And sometimes I think we need to roll our sleeves and say, hey, maybe this part, we're not going to deal with it, right? Fine. But there are some that we really need to, and we need to really do a lot of homework to make sure that, hey, all the precautions, all the security measures are in place for that. And for these, right, I think it's sometimes from a technology development point of view, it does take a lot of time off the core product to work on these security related issues. But if you need to do that in order to enable the full product, then these are things that needs to be done. So I think these are things that we didn't expect. And I think for other health tech related startups who are too focused on solving the problem, don't forget, if they can't solve the fundamental problem of security, data privacy, like nobody can even use their product to start off.
Absolutely true. Okay, final question, since we've had your amazing ideas and thoughts on this space for a while. Paint us one amazing innovation that you're hopeful for in healthcare. What's the panacea we're waiting for?
Oh, I'm not sure if it's controversial, but I truly believe in it. I believe that, in the future, we will have all the tools within our disposal, of course, in different means, that we'll be able to measure ourselves constantly and be able to not just detect issues, right? When I mean issues, it could be tumors or cancers before they even happen, right? And alert our healthcare provider before it even happens, or when the point of contact happens, right? So that maybe I see the future where we need to deal with a lot less of, issues or serious conditions when they happen. I see, and I hope to see a future that's within our lifetime, that we can deal with problems at the very infancy stage or even before it happens. And I hope that it can be available to the majority of the population.
That's amazing. Proactive, pre-detecting, technology-based healthcare, or basically the matrix of healthcare.
I think that in the future, all of us would have, maybe a pack, right? A box, like how we would have a first aid kit at home, right? It will be an expanded version of it with all the measuring tools and all those things that, we literally have what we would have in a routine checkup today. We'll all have it economically available in our homes, right? Who needs to wait 1 year to take those basic measurements, right? Maybe we can take it continuously, or maybe weekly, monthly. And, if we want to go for a check, it would probably be at facilities with a lot more, heavy equipment, right? But I do hope that, I do see that within our lifetime, it may happen.
Cheers to that. Thank you, Peiru. This has been an amazing, amazing conversation. And it's been genuinely very, very good for us and TiE Singapore's audience to hear the future of health tech version of Peiru. So thank you so much, Peiru. Nice to have you.
Thank you for having me.